You have no idea what is about to happen. And the reason for this is we have never in our lives, or even going back through history, seen a confluence of events like what we are experiencing now. On this video, I'm going to talk about what these events are, what has caused them, and what the effect is going to be both on the stock market and on the economy. So with everything that's been happening recently, there has been a confluence of events that have combined to create a situation which none of us have seen in our lifetimes. And even if you go down through history, barring maybe World War II, no one has ever seen a combination of the events that we are currently seeing now, both on a geopolitical basis, on a political basis here domestically, Fed policy, government policy, what's going on in the economy, inflation. Nobody has ever seen all of these things combined in the way they have, and they're going to have a tremendous effect on the stock market and the economy. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about what these factors are, and ultimately at the end of this video, I'm going to come to a dramatic conclusion and also try to tell you what I am doing, because I think that is the best way to suggest to you what you should be doing, because obviously actions are better than words. But I'll tell you how I'm protecting myself and my portfolio and suggest some ways that you can too. So let's start with one of the things I find the most astounding and the most really disappointing, I guess, is the current U.S. political situation. Now, I don't care where you stand on the political spectrum. You can be a liberal, you can be a conservative, you can be an independent. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I consider myself a libertarian. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but I tend to be obviously more conservative because I'm an investor. And I think investors not only have to be more conservative, but they also have to be logical, and you have to, as an investor, look at things with a very clear eye and a clear focus and make decisions that are based on reality and not on policy or some kind of agenda that you have cooked up in your mind somewhere. Now, the first thing that comes up for me, there are two things combined. One is extreme and unprecedented government incompetence. Okay, that's the first thing. And a related issue is an incredible and unprecedented level of Fed incompetence. Now, these two things are combined and related, so I'll discuss them both together. The Biden administration, both in its policies and its actions, have demonstrated to date a breathtaking level of incompetence that was almost inconceivable as recently as a year ago. Starting with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was poorly planned, poorly executed, sent messages to all the bad actors in the world that the United States didn't know what it was doing and basically was willing to just, abandon its allies on a moment's notice. That was the first act of this administration which really led it down the negative road that it's on today. The second area of complete incompetence, in my view, is its handling of the U.S. energy market. It's no secret that when they came into office, the first thing he did on the first day was deep six the XL pipeline. That really set the tone for everything that he's done domestically to basically declare a war on the U.S. oil and gas business. Now, you can argue over, the Green New Deal and whether it's a good thing, whether it's not a good thing. I don't think any rational person is against the concept of clean energy. I mean, who would be against that, right? But where we are technologically now, there is no way that windmills and solar are going to replace our dependence on oil and gas. I've discussed this extensively on this channel. And, my recommendations to invest heavily in oil and gas over the last year and a half basically prove this position. So having taken a position of making the U.S. more dependent on foreign oil, taking us from a position basically of oil independence, which we had when Biden took over, to a position now where we're not only dependent on Russian oil, but now that we put the Russian embargo on, we're talking to Iran, we're talking to Venezuela, we're talking to Saudi Arabia, trying to get them to pump more oil for us. Meanwhile, our U.S. oil and gas business is basically languishing due to excessive government policies aimed at thwarting the business. I mean, this is like unbelievable. You know, if you were an alien coming in and observing this, like, you know, a bunch of amoeba moving around on the earth, and you tried to understand the logic of the current administration's policies towards oil and gas, you would think that these people have no intelligence at all or no decision-making abilities. Take as an example Jennifer Granholm. She has no energy experience, okay? So what does Biden do? He puts her as head of the energy department. Just like Buttigieg is the head of the transportation department, he has no transportation experience. So basically in the Biden administration, the job qualifications that you need in order to get a cabinet position is to basically have no experience in the area that you're being hired for. It'd be great if that were true in corporate America. I'd be the CEO of Amazon right now. So whether it's energy policy, whether it's pulling out of Afghanistan, whether it's your policies on the border, this administration has consistently showed not only contempt for the American people, but also gross and complete incompetence. I don't expect this to change anytime soon. It's breathtaking. I've never seen anything like it. And it's really a shame for this country. And it's a shame for the world because lack of U.S. leadership creates chaos in the world. Second thing, Fed policy. Okay? Fed policy combined with reckless government spending has caused the inflation that we have today. All right? And I've talked about this on many other videos, but just to summarize it again here in case you're new, the Fed stayed in the game of manipulating the capital markets by printing money and buying securities and keeping interest rates at zero. They stayed in that game for far too long. When COVID was beginning to trail off and the economy was taking off, the government, again, when Biden came in, flushed $1.3 trillion into the economy at the same time the Fed was printing $120 billion a month and buying securities and flushing all this liquidity into the market. That caused increased demand for goods and services in the economy, causing shortages, driving up the cost of everything, and all of us see this today, whether we drive a car or whether we go to the grocery store. It's evident and we see it. It's entirely due to government ineptness and government incompetence. The second thing that's influencing everything is the geopolitical situation. When Russia invaded Ukraine, it set into motion a series of events. It just exacerbates the situation that we already had going into it. The sanctioning of Russia, the sanctioning of Russian oil, while it may contribute to, bankrupting Russia eventually, in the short term, it's just exacerbating an already terrible situation. Gas prices now are approaching $5 a gallon. I think they're going to $7, $8, $9, $10 a gallon. Who knows how high they're going to go? It's caused the price of oil to go up. It was already on an upward trend, as we've talked about on this channel. All of these things have just made a bad situation worse. Now, don't think this Ukraine thing's going away anytime soon, or the effects of it. It's not. It's going to be with us for a long time. and it's going to continue to make oil prices rise. And I've projected on this channel that oil is going to 150. I'm thinking it could go to 200 before all of this is over, which would be disastrous for the economy. Next, a related issue is the energy crisis, okay? This is all related, it's all tied together, but the energy crisis that we are currently experiencing is global. It is due to a combination of government mismanagement and, particularly in Europe, their rush to get into clean energy before there was the technology to support such a move. This was a purely ideological move. It was not based on logic. It was not based on common sense. It was based on ideology. Angela Merkel, I put most of the blame on her for basically deep-sixing Germany. And it's very serious because it affects the entire world. It affects NATO. It affects how we relate to Germany and the other NATO members. They are now completely dependent on Russian oil. They cannot take the steps required to put the pressure on Putin to make him stop this war. They're completely screwed, and it's all because of ideology. It had nothing to do with a logical, business-like approach to how they supply their energy. This whole green energy thing at this stage is purely ideological. The U.S., of course, is in a similar situation. It's completely self-imposed, right? We have plenty of energy in this country. All we have to do is drill. All we have to do is drill, okay? But the government, through increasing regulation, through canceling pipelines, through making permits more difficult or impossible to get, by disallowing drilling on public lands, by eliminating drilling in Alaska. All of this has contributed to the lack of supply. Meanwhile, demand is skyrocketing. Now, this last issue is something that, for some reason, people in the media, the Wall Street types that you see, interviewed on CNBC and Fox News and all these places, people don't seem to be focusing on this, but they're going to be focusing on it very, very soon. The effect of inflation on corporate profits. It's hard for me to believe, but it is in fact true that most analysts on Wall Street today still have estimates as high as 40% profit growth predicted for 2022. This is complete and utter fantasy. Now, the government announced yesterday that inflation on an annualized basis is 7.9%. This is up from 7.5% the month before. Now, if you believe that, I've got some marshland in Florida that I want to sell you, and I want to sell it to you really quickly. That is complete BS. Remember, these government numbers are cooked. They're not real numbers. All you have to do is go to the grocery store, put gas in your car, look at what things are costing you to heat your house. Look at anything that you're spending now, it's going up, and it's going up a hell of a lot more than 7.9%. So where are they coming up with these numbers? You ever ask yourself? It's obvious things are going up more than 7.9%. In fact, I would say it's more like 20%. We're in an environment right now where inflation is 20%. When you're in an environment where inflation is 20%, how are corporate profits going to grow 40%? That is completely ridiculous. As inflation continues and gets worse, because it's getting worse, guys, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. As inflation continues to get worse, the costs go up. No company, and I don't care who you are, no company is going to be able to maintain its profit margins when there's 20% inflation. All right? So all of these projections are going to get revised. The stock market's going to continue to sell off, and we're going to be in deep doo-doo. Okay, so you might ask, okay, Greg, I agree, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. But what the hell do I do to protect myself against what's going to happen? And it's going to happen very soon. Okay, so I predict two things, all right? Here are my predictions. Two things. One, we're in a bear market in stocks, okay? People just don't realize it yet. This buy the dip mentality, people are going to cling to this until it's obvious to everybody that it doesn't work anymore. But this buy the dip is so ingrained in investors' minds that they're not going to let go of this. And you're going to see deep sell-offs followed by, sharp rallies, right? That's the definition of a bear market. But there's no way that stock prices aren't going further down from here and significantly further down from here, okay? Second conclusion, we are going to go into a recession in this country, and Europe is going into a depression. And I wouldn't be surprised if this war in Ukraine spread and proliferated into a full-blown war in Europe, okay? I hope it doesn't happen, but it wouldn't surprise me. All right, you got a guy, Putin, who's basically evolved into a madman. He's got nuclear warheads. Who knows if they work or not? That's another thing you never hear anybody talk about. Nothing in Russia works. Chernobyl, for example, is still a complete environmental disaster. Like, how many years later? What, 20 years later? I don't know how many years it is. Chernobyl is still a disaster. There are power plants just sitting there that they don't have the capital investment to fix them and get them running again. I mean, Russia is a third world country for all intents and purposes, and we're assuming that all their nukes work. Admittedly, all they need is one to work, but I would venture to say that our nuclear arsenal is in much better shape, much more state-of-the-art, and much more able to actually hit something that is targeted. But I see a deep recession in this country and also a depression in Europe. Now, what do? How do you protect yourself? How do you deal with this situation, all right? Now, a lot of you are going to be in denial, and you're going to resist what I'm saying, and you're going to continue to buy the dip, and you continue to think that things are cheap. But I would say that while you might be successful in certain circumstances with that kind of strategy, and at some point there will be a buying opportunity, between now and when the shit really hits the fan, there's going to be a lot of blood in the streets. So in my mind, the only way to protect yourself is to either go to cash, which I don't recommend, or to be heavily invested in energy. Because this energy thing has got a lot further to go before we reach the point where it goes the other way, because oil prices don't go up forever, regardless of what the situation is. The question is, how long are they going to go up? Nobody knows that. But right now, in this environment, you want to be long energy. And we've talked many, many times on this channel. My biggest picks are Exxon and Chevron, which I have, from me, enormous positions in. In fact, I have 80 to 90% of all of my portfolio in energy. The other one that comes up for you to potentially look at is Occidental Petroleum. That one recently has rallied quite a bit because Berkshire Hathaway has a large position in it. One was to finance Anadarko, and those were largely warrants, but then they went in and bought a bunch of the common stock also, so they have a big position in that. That got a lot of attention. I like the company. I like Exxon and Chevron much better, but I don't care what you're in. Just increase your exposure to the energy business, because right now it's one of the few businesses that are going to be killing it. The second thing I would recommend is commodities. Now, I've recommended on other videos, and I'll put them in the end screen, and you can take a look at some more specific recommendations. But broad-based commodities, maybe an ETF. I think you want to own in general, and this includes oil and gas, you want to own things that are real, things that survival depends on. And this would be largely the industrial metals, okay? So there are a lot of options for that. My first recommendation is oil and gas. My second recommendation would be industrial metals, all right? So that's basically what I have to say. You know, I wish it were more positive. Unfortunately, there are certain points in time, particularly when you're an investor, when it doesn't make sense to be positive. You have to look at things realistically. You have to take steps to protect your portfolio and protect your wealth. Okay, well, that's what I have to say today. I hope you found some of this useful. And if you did, please like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on board on the channel. We talk about investing. We talk about the markets. We talk about all the things basically that I talked about on this video. And the purpose of the channel is to make you a better and richer investor. All right? So for now, it's Greg out.